What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's our privilege to show up with you and to bring you content to get you thinking, moving, inspire you a little bit, reflect. And I want to thank you for being here. We can't do it without you, and it's amazing the growth of this community and where everything's headed. And just want to say thank you for that. This week, I'm excited to bring on a guy who is a systems builder with a heart for impact. Garr Russell is the founder of Fireside RV Rental, a national franchise that turns idle RVs into income generating assets. He's helped over 65 locations scale with purpose by combining automation, faith driven leadership, and practical business frameworks. If you've ever wondered how to turn a side hustle into a scalable system, this conversation might just be for you. So I'm excited to sit down with Garr. He has a super interesting backstory. And this is the kids who say chop it up a little bit. Get to learn about him, his story, share it with all of you. And I'd love to hear what you think. I can't tell you how much it means for you guys to comment, like, subscribe, share on all your platforms, and what it's doing for us and the algorithm as they move us forward so that more people find us. And remember, it's those little things like comments, thumbs up, great episode, something easy like that that help us reach our goal and our goal of our community, not just the show, but all of us to be the most impactful podcast in the world. So thank you for doing that. I hope you enjoy this week's conversation with our newest friend, Garr Russell. Garr, my newest friend, welcome to the On Purpose podcast. How are you today?
Hey, brother, I'm happy, man. Better now that I'm with you.
I appreciate it. And I'm first off, I want to say thank you for what you're doing, man, for putting the opportunity to travel in people's laps and removing excuses sometimes where people say they want to go RV, but they don't own one. You've eliminated that for them. But more importantly, I want to thank you for sharing your story and for finding the courage to share your story and realizing that people can't learn from our mistakes, our past, if we're not willing to share it. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, man, you're so welcome. I love being able to take a trial that I've been through and share it with somebody and give them hope because sometimes we just need to know that somebody's been where we're at.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like it's so funny that we'll look up to people that have overcome adversity. We'll watch Rocky 1,000 times over the 50 years it's been out, but we forget to see ourselves as the real life Rockies.
Yeah, it's so true, and one of the things I've been talking about lately in regards to that is, if we only just slow down and take a moment and go back and look at situations we've been in the past where we've gotten through, then it's easy for us to build that hope and realize, oh, wait, I've been through a mess before. I've been through a trial before. I can get through this too. But sometimes the emotions of the moment are just so heavy, we don't allow ourselves to do that.
Right. And we get caught up in the comparison of why is nobody else going through this but me? And
Oh, for sure.
we fail to recognize that unique thing you're going through. One, isn't that unique? And two, other people are going through it. We just don't know it because nobody's talking about it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually been an idea of mine. I'd love to start a website where you can literally just go on and just type in whatever you're going through, and it will just pull up 40 testimonies of other people like, oh, yeah, here's Bill in California in August of 23. He went through that, and just because you're right. There's nothing that's not common to man that we're going through.
No, but yeah, yeah, 100%. I think that's awesome. Well, that's a next vi business adventure for you. But before we going too far here, Gar, I want to give you a warm up. I like to think of this as kind of like a workout podcast. I got to warm you up before we get to the heavy stuff. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
All right, here's your first warm up question. If you got one word to describe you, what's your word?
Hopeful.
You think it's always been helpful, or has that been recently?
No, I think that's definitely been a gift that I've had for many years. I've actually, which is interesting because uh, depression and runs heavy in my family. Depression, alcoholism, this and that. but I've always had that opposite characteristic inside of me too, of just being a hopeful person, of being able to say, okay, I'm here right now. I'm in the middle of this junk, uh, but I can see an end. I can see a future. I can see something coming to pass, and part of that is probably why I've done good in entrepreneurship, because when things happen, it doesn't uh, it doesn't stop me.
Mm. What's a favorite quote or a quote you kind of live by, Gar?
A favorite quote that really been meditating on the last couple of years is life happens for you, not to you.
Mm. Such a good perspective shift, right?
Yeah, and I don't even know where I heard that quote, if it's yeah, Tony Robbins that I was digesting a couple years ago, or I'm trying to think of that other guy that I was studying a couple years ago. But yeah, I love it because when we realize that anything in life that happens can be used for our advantage, we can literally go back to that moment 10, 20, 30 years ago and say, okay, how was that moment actually a moment that can help me be a better person today? And we can find that. We can find that hope in that. And we can find that, oh, okay, that actually helped me to have more grit. That helped me to have more compassion on others. That helped me to understand what other.
Yeah, that's so true. And we want to skip past a lot of the unpleasant stuff in our life, but that's where the true journey lessons are learned in the journey.
Yeah, it's so true. And I feel like that's, how I was raised. I'm 47 years old. And when I was, 8, 10, 12, 15 years old, that's kind of how the world worked. Like, you don't talk about it.
Mm,
Like, you move on, you bury it under the carpet
yeah.
or under the rug, or that's at least in my family, that's just seemed to be kind of how things were. Like, we just move on.
Yeah.
But
No, I think you're 100% right, Gar, especially for males, right? Especially for men. I think there was an immense amount of pressure through those generations to just keep your head down, go to work, and not say anything about anything.
yeah, yeah, just swallow those emotions, grit through it, man up, all those different terms that we hear. And that is so untrue because I just got done reading this book on mindsets by I don't see it here, but the author in this book, she says we swallow our emotions alive, and
Mm,
that really resonated with me. Like we have to process our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, our situations and circumstances. If we don't, we literally swallow them alive, and then they're just on the inside of us, changing the way that we think, changing the way that we look at the world, until eventually, at some point, we've got to process them, we got to digest them, we got to deal with them.
yeah, no, that's so true. All right, if your life had a theme song, Gar, you get an entrance song in life. What is your song?
Oh, I don't know. That's an interesting one. I'm usually pretty good at these off the cuff kind of things. I do a lot of podcasts, but if my life had a theme song, um, it might be what kind of just popped to the top of my head there was a song by CC Winans, and I think it's called "The Goodness of God." Just kind of back to that life happens for you, not to you. We just had a retreat for one of our companies, and preparing for that retreat to go there and just bring value and just love on my franchisees. I actually had this experience where the Lord woke me up at 4:14 in the morning, and he brought me through all these moments in my life and all these painful moments. And in these painful moments, he showed me the truth, the reality of where he was and how those painful moments made me who I am today. So it makes me think of that song,
Mm,
like how nothing is truly ever wasted. It is all, God can use it all.
that's good. What's a favorite book or a book you find yourself going back to, Gar?
Well, I mean, my favorite book, is the Bible, and more specifically inside the Bible, the book of Proverbs, which is written by King Solomon, the wisest, richest man that ever lived. I would say that's probably, my most favorite book. And then outside of that, a book that I probably quote a lot is a book called 3 Feet from Gold And let me turn around and see who it's by real quick. Who am I kidding? My eyes can't see that far behind me. It's written by a lady who studied Napoleon Hill's work, Sharon
Okay.
something, and it is a phenomenal book, 3 Feet from Gold.
All right, I'll have to add that. Good. All right, one final warm-up question, Gar. Even though I think you're warmed up, I'm gonna give you one more. You get to have dinner with one person. They could have passed on or still be with us. Who would you have dinner with, and what would you want to ask them?
Dinner with one person. I mean, instantly what comes to my mind is Jesus. Uh, but I was trying to think of another one on top of that. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'd just stick with that answer.
Yeah, what would you want
Yeah.
to ask?
And what I want to ask them is probably how, man, how could somebody literally go through all he went through uh, for someone else? I mean, I just think of when I go through a painful situation where I'm trying to do something for someone else, like how hard that can be sometimes, but to think of what Jesus went through, I mean, in his crucifixion, I can't imagine that kind of pain and torture for someone else.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to hear his take on it nowadays.
Yeah.
All right, you feeling warmed up, Gar?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk. I want to talk about the whole RV franchise, the Fireside RV rental company that you launched, and starting it from a single RV. Talk us through the origin story of how that became what you're doing today.
Yeah, that was what I call a pain to purpose business, just like my credit counseling business was. I bought my wife an RV for our 10-year wedding anniversary. She was 7 months pregnant with number four. We went to a campground to go camping. She is miserable. She's 7 months pregnant. It's hot. It's the middle of summer. She's chasing a toddler around, and she literally says, "I'm going home." Like, okay, you're going home for what? Did you forget something? She's like, no, this is horrible. I'm going home. Like, this is no fun. And so there I am. I sit at the campground with my two olders, and I'm thinking, all right, I just bought an RV for my wife. She is not interested in this at all right now. What am I going to do? And I had owned some real estate and been an entrepreneur for a while. I'm like, I'm going to put this on Craigslist for rent. That's what I'm going to do. So I throw it up on Craigslist for rent, and literally within a couple hours, I've got people reaching out to me uh, wanting to rent my RV. And so the light bulb kind of came on, and one thing led to the next, and here we are today. We have the nation's only RV rental management franchise. We have 70 locations around the country, and yeah, I never would have thought.
So tell me, what was your wife's reaction when you told her you put it up on Craigslist and people actually wanted to rent the thing she wanted nothing to do with?
I don't recall in that moment. I can tell you her reaction. Fast forward a couple months when we had our child, and all of our kids were born via C-section. So if you ever have a C-section baby, it's like pretty routine. Like you go check in, and then you're in there, and then you're back in your room, and like the process, right? You go in for like a natural delivery. You don't know. You could be in there
Right.
10 minutes or 10 hours. And so I'm saying all this to justify what I did next. So we literally have Isabella. We check back into the room that we're in, and I tell my wife, "All right, love, I'll be back in a minute. I gotta go take care of something." She's like, "All right, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to the dealership to sign on four more RVs because we were in the RV rental business now, and that's what I did. I went to the dealership and signed on four more RVs. Interestingly enough, though, while I was doing that, I heard that still small voice of the Lord telling me, use other people's RVs. And so I shifted the business model to other people's RVs, and that really exploded us because there's millions and millions of RVs sitting around doing nothing. So
Yeah.
it's very low overhead for me. I don't have all the overhead cost. It's a blessing to people who don't use their RVs, right? Which to me and you, that makes no sense. What, you don't use your RV?
Right.
But unfortunately, most people, their RVs are kind of sitting around doing nothing.
And what year was this that you launched this?
This was in 2016, July
Okay.
of 2016.
So pre the COVID RV boom. So you're into it early before really full-time RVing and the craze of RVing really took off during COVID.
Yeah, yeah, this was pre-COVID and all that. Actually, during COVID, I had laid off. I had built a team by then. I probably had maybe 8 or 10 locations, and I laid off my corporate team because we thought, well, who knows how long this is going to last, you know, with all this with this COVID stuff. And shortly after I did that, I got an order for 72 RVs to go to the different power plants around Michigan for the engineers to be quarantined in. So, and on the other side of that, several of my competitors who owned all their inventory, they went out of business because they had all the overhead of brick and mortar and the payments and insurance and all the things that I didn't have
Mhm.
because I simply partnered with storage facilities. The owners of the RVs paid for the storage, and so it was very low overhead for me. So we were able to survive that where a lot of others didn't. And then we came out of that booming and thriving.
So let me ask you a question on that. So because we do have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this or people that are thinking about dabbling in business. So you went against the current model at that time, right? Like you just said, the current model was own your RVs, have the asset technically that you own. You bucked that and used other people's assets to reduce your liabilities. What led you to have the confidence to not follow the business norm in your industry and have the courage to go the other route?
It was honestly, like I said, it was when I was driving to that dealership and I heard that still small voice of the Lord saying, use other people's RVs. That was honestly it because that wasn't a thought in my mind and until then. And that's so that I just started walking down that path and I saw that I was able to scale so much faster. And there was just so many RVs sitting around doing nothing. It just made it, so easy to walk down that path.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me because I think a lot of times we stifle our own growth by trying to stay in the path that's already created
Yeah.
instead of getting creative and looking outside. Have you always been able to see outside the norms on things?
I think I've always, yeah, kind of operated a little different than most as far as more going with my gut than, okay, I'm going to do something. How is everybody doing it? And then follow that path. Like my credit counseling business, kind of the same deal. My niche, I created a niche of helping create homeowners was my niche. Instead of trying to service everybody, it was specific in that regard. And actually, it kind of leads me back to a book that I read years and years and years ago called The Pumpkin Plan. And this book the story was about a gentleman who uh, carved a pumpkin and then he set his baby inside of it and took a picture and thought it was cute. Well, then he's like, hey, I'm going to do this the next year. And so he got a bigger pumpkin. Fast forward several years down the road, he's on a website buying this hybrid pumpkin seed from Australia so he could grow this pumpkin. So, and what the whole premise is that this book talks about is like find your niche and go with that. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Find the
Mhm.
audience that you're called to serve and do that. Serve that audience. That actually is how my business went from 12 locations several years ago to the 70 locations we have now is I really niched down to to who am I called to serve? I serve Christian entrepreneurs because, right, like you asked my favorite book, the
Yeah.
Bible. Well, if I'm coaching out of the Bible, but I'm coaching to somebody who's an atheist or whatever, I'm not going to be as effective in serving that person. And so I really niched down, uh, in 23 and realized, no, that's who I'm called to serve. That's who I'm passionate about serving. That's what I'm passionate about. And when I did that, my business exploded. And so many entrepreneurs, we feel like we need to be everything to everyone. And really, that's not the case. People are going to resonate when they have a specific message like that.
So let's stay on that for a second, Gar. I think that's fascinating because you're absolutely right, right? As an entrepreneur myself, there is a tendency to want to stay wide and varied because you don't want to miss opportunities, right? Because you think the more
Yeah.
wide I am, the more opportunities I have. But you're right. A lot of times when you narrow down and you niche down, you find that's actually your lane. So how would you coach somebody through finding what is their actual lane and avoiding the trap of being too wide and trying to be for everybody?
Yeah. I think it just comes down to what you're passionate about, right? What gives you the energy to do it day in, day out to where it doesn't feel like a job. And when you find that, and more specifically too, it's inside of my business, what am I passionate about? Because that was the other thing I realized. I went to have you ever heard of ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson?
Yep.
Yeah, so I went to a funnel hacking live about 4 years ago in Orlando, and I learned like, hey, I am the guy who likes to be out talking to people, casting the vision, sharing ideas. I need somebody who's an operator. I need somebody who can bring my ideas to life and systematize them and put them inside of a manual and stuff like that. And so when I did that, I actually went to one of my franchisees who I knew was very gifted in that, and I offered for her to buy in an equity stake of the company. And that is one of the things that took us to where we are today, is realizing, hey, I don't have to be all things for the business. It's not all dependent on me, and it's okay that I don't have to have all the equity either. I gave up 20% of my company to do that, and that was a huge blessing for me. So it's just finding those things, right? And a lot of, practical ways you could do that, take maybe like a personality profile test or a disc profile or something like that to figure out, okay, what actually excites me. But if you just sit down and think about it for a minute, you can fairly easy map out a couple things of, yeah, you're right. I don't like fulfilling the order, but I like selling the thing, okay, then I need to find somebody who can fulfill the order.
Yeah, that self-awareness is so critical, especially when you're going to go into business for yourself,
Yeah,
right?
it sure is. Yeah, yeah. The E-Myth talks about this, right? A classic book for entrepreneurship is there's different divisions, different operations inside of a company. Well, which one of those do I most resonate with? Which one brings me the most life? And then staying in your lane, and a lot of times in business, we think one of the big things where people get stifled and they stop their business growth is they don't delegate. They do it all themselves. It's that fear of bringing on that first employee. And what are they going to do? And will they do it as good as me? And I always say, hey, if you could find somebody to do something 80% as good as you, then bring them on. Because guess what? The 100% good you think you're doing it, once you bring this person on and you empower them, watch out, because you're actually going to realize, oh, they're actually way better than I am at this thing because they're passionate about it and I wasn't.
Right, and it's their thing. It's not one of the five things you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's their lane, it's their gifting, it's what their strength is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's such a balance of discipline is wanting the success so bad that you give up a little bit of the control to get it versus trying
Yeah.
to create it all yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, when you look at successful companies, I mean, you just have that mixture of people. You can't be all things. You don't have all the giftings. You don't. So the quicker you realize that you don't have all the solutions for all the things, and the quicker you realize you can go faster together than alone. I mean, that was the whole thing with Fireside was community. Was I called it when I first started this, it was all about the power of partnership. So I literally was in Facebook groups with others renting out their RV, and I was sharing what I was doing, bringing value to the community, and then others would realize the value of what I brought, and then that's when I had my first location outside of mine. When the gentleman's like, "Man, you have these giftings and this and that," and I said, "Hey, tell you what, why don't you be my beta test? Why don't you launch my second location up there? I'll mentor you, I'll teach you, I'll show you all the things." And what I learned about him, this is Mr. Kim in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, who's actually just retiring from us. He's getting ready to come down to Florida and retire. Uh, what I learned from him was customer service. Like this guy's customer service is like through the roof. And so that helped me up my game in regards to customer service. And I helped him up his game.
So when did it hit you that this is something that's bigger than what I'm just doing here in this one spot? When did you come to that realization, and what did you put in place to allow yourself to grow?
I feel like it hits me. It just hit me again last night. I feel like it hits me all the time. Like, wow, this is so much bigger than me. Uh, Man, I've had so many of these moments where it's hit me like, wow, this is like I just had it yesterday. I was on a podcast and I was sharing with the host about how one of our competitors, who's a seven-figure company, they're literally signing the company over to us next week. They're giving us the company. And it didn't even hit me because I'm so in the grind of some things. It didn't hit me till I was sharing that on this podcast, just to like, holy smokes, we literally just increased by seven figures in 2 weeks because of how far we've come. Where I was on my fireside chats last night where we jump on with our franchisees, and I was like, holy smokes, one of our franchisees was sharing the story about how her and her husband signed up together. He's the one who found the business. They signed up together. A couple months afterwards, he got sick and passed away. This guy was younger than me with two small children, and she is full force with Fireside. She just came down to Florida several weeks ago, and I got to meet her and her little kids. She's coming to our retreat in November. Like it's constantly hitting me like, wow, this is something that's so much bigger than me. This is a community of like-minded people doing life together.
Yeah, let's explore that for a second because thing I find interesting with you, Gar, is you keep talking about community and the people.
Yeah, it's this is the biggest thing that the Lord has shown me with all this is it's all about community. And all the way back, as I was studying this out and thinking this through, the Lord literally brought me all the way back to Genesis, where, right, God decided to create Adam. Why? Because of community. Like
Mm.
he wanted community with others. He wanted community. So he created Adam and Eve, and then he told them to be fruitful and subdue and multiply. Like that is literally inside the DNA of every human being, whether you believe there's a God or not. You desire community. I mean, think of it, right? I could probably guess, and I guess that I'm right. You're probably in an Airstream Facebook group.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a community that you're in. You have this commonality of you all love Airstreams. And so you're in this group. You could be in a Jeeping group where you all share, give each other rubber duckies. Like it's inside of us at the core of our DNA. We were created for community, or the way I would say it spiritually is we were created for fellowship, and there's a really good book about that called, man, I haven't quoted that book in forever. I can't even think of the name of it. Purpose Driven Life by Rick
Yeah.
Warren. Well, we were created for five purposes, right? Worship, fellowship, discipleship, ministry, evangelism. And really, fellowship is the number one reason of why we were created. And so yeah, once like I got that revelation about that in my business, and that just happened in 2023, that's when our business literally exploded.
So, and I'm guessing, I'm just gonna guess, Gar, that's a message you share with your franchisees that I think sometimes we miss in business. We chase dollars, we chase bottom lines, we chase revenues and return on investment. And sometimes that's short-sighted that we miss the community building, we miss the team building, which actually produces the financial results we're chasing.
Yeah, we sure do. We get so stuck on doing the thing. I was just talking to Ben, who my sales rep for the franchises, in a call earlier today, and I was just kind of unpacking these thoughts with him, and we were talking about doing year-end reviews, and some franchisees being, discouraged, and others that we're trying to do a year-end review with them. We can't even get a hold of them to do it because they're out there crushing it, and the thing about it is with inside community and then inside building a business, the thing about it, it's just like marriage or parenting or any other thing. It's when we step into an adventure, when we step into a business, whatever it is, that adventure is going to bring to surface insecurities, lies, past trauma, all these things that what do? We try to bury them all so we could keep doing the thing, but really that's actually part of the process. And so
Mhm.
in these communities, like our fireside chat last night, we had a franchisee who he didn't meet our criteria for the year. Instead of closing his location, we sent him a proposal to go into a 90-day plan, and if he would complete what we asked him to complete in this 90-day plan, we would keep his territory alive. He was in this. He was in the fireside chat last night, which we hadn't seen him in there maybe ever. And what happened? He got vulnerable and he shared. He's like, "You guys, I'm so sorry. This is what's happening. I'm going through divorce. I was embarrassed. I'm doing this and that." So he was able to come back into the community kind of with his tail tucked between his legs, but be vulnerable enough to share. And sure enough, one of our other franchisees who had gone through a divorce 10 years ago was like, "Oh man, brother, I know exactly how you feel. I've been there." They're now connecting outside of the fireside chat so he can walk alongside this brother and encourage him. And that's the power of community when we're in an environment where we feel safe and we know that, we don't have to pretend like we have it all together like so many entrepreneurs do. That's where real community and stuff happens.
Let me ask you this. I just talked about this on another episode, and that is this idea that success is limited and that I don't want to empower you to be successful because somehow that's going to take away from the success I can achieve. How do you how do you create that camaraderie within your team? And what would you suggest to others that are in industries to not look at competition as taking from you, but bringing value to you?
Yeah, I was just in a podcast yesterday of a corporate coach and we were talking about this. And she was like, "Well, if you bring somebody into a corporation, you hire them, but then all of a sudden they're excelling in making you look not as strong in a certain area. Like, how do you do that? How would you coach somebody in regards to that?" And what I said to her is I said, oh, I don't have that t-shirt on. What I said is life happens for you, not to you. So let's say that does happen. Perfect case and example was the first business I started. I call it AD, after I died to myself and started walking with the Lord in 2003, was a credit counseling company. And I started this company after leaving another company doing the exact same thing. Uh, and I told the gentleman, like, the way you're running this company, it's not moral, it's not ethic. And he agreed and let me start a competing company. And I went on to have my company and succeed. He went on to actually shut down that company, so you could call that a failure, but he found something else that he could excel at, and he went into that and he excelled. So if we have that mindset, like, yeah, you know what, I can literally be hiring the person that's going to replace me because they're going to far out excel me. The What I told the girl in this podcast, I said, "Great, put that on your resume. I literally was so good at spotting talent, I hired the person that replaced me. I have a good eye for spotting talent," right? Like, turn it into a positive. Or like with my franchisees, we've had this where we get territories that launch that are kind of close to each other. They're perfectly within what I'm regulated to sell, but the franchisee gets a little nervous. I just tell them, "You know what? I can't convince you right now that this isn't going to benefit the both of you. But what I can say is, trust me, and if a year from now this looks like it's not going the way it should, I'll make it right." And what they end up finding is, oh my gosh, it's actually not to my detriment, because now there's this large music festival that needs so many units, and there's this race, and there's this campground, and we can service them so well because we're working together. We actually are building a stronger brand identity in this area. But yeah, you get that fear like, oh no, this is going to put me under, this is, and I call it a reaction instead of a response. You react in the moment of seeing, because this new franchise that I'm talking about, this other location had been launched for months. They just didn't realize it until they went on to one of our web pages the other day and they saw them, 20 something miles from them. And then they freaked out about it. But the truth is that branch had been there for several months. And, so
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? And I've had similar experiences where coaching leaders and they're worried about bringing on somebody that, like you said, overperforms them. And I always challenge them. Anybody I bring on should outperform me. If I brought them on to stay less performing than I am, why would I have brought them on?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They should excel. And that's where, again, that comes down to the life is happening for me. There's an insecurity inside of me. There's a lie that I believe somewhere along my journey that has got me to feel insecure about this person. Okay. And it's taken the time to do what I call get curious. I learned that from Tony Robbins. Get curious and say, okay, why am I feeling this way?
Mhm.
And then more importantly, if you're a believer and you have the Holy Spirit, then you can ask the Holy Spirit to show you. And the Holy Spirit, in my book, My History, I literally, it's me 5 hours with the Lord, and He brought me through all these moments in my life, starting in second grade, where something happened. I believed a lie, and that lie formed who I was, throughout my journey of life. And He literally walked me through all these moments, spoke truth to me, and that book came out of me preparing for my fireside retreat, which is really cool because in hindsight, as I was thinking about it, the reason I got a lot of the freedom I got was because my heart was, I'm getting ready to go and I want to be able to encourage and equip others. So, with that heart of me wanting to go and serve and bring freedom to others, the Lord said, okay, here, I'm going to bring you some freedom here to help you bring the freedom. And it literally came out with a framework at the back of my book of when you're feeling pain, when you're feeling an emotion and a thought rise, here's how you can take that and explore it and bring it back to, okay, what's the root of where did I get that lie in my mind?
Yeah, that's good. And, I always throw out to people, if you're leading people and you can't tell me anybody that's excelled beyond your current position, I would argue you're not leading them properly.
Yeah, for sure. Because yeah, when you're leading people, typically you're the visionary for them in that department or whatever you're leading them in, and you're keeping them encouraged and excited and keeping them inside of their imagination and looking for ways to better themselves because they want you to come back and tell them, hey, great job. I appreciate you. You're doing amazing here. And if that kind of environment is what you're in, then yeah, they're going to excel in areas that aren't your strengths and are their strengths naturally.
And that should be what you want, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that's under you for any period of time, I think your goal should be to empower them as much as possible so that eventually they do surpass you.
Yeah, you want them to spring ahead. And we had a franchise that closed this year, and it was so cool how he closed because this was his first entrepreneurial adventure was with us at Fireside. Well, when he contacted me to let me know that he's selling his location, that he was selling his location, and I'm like, okay, like walk me through this. What happened? Are we not serving you well, this and that? He's like, no, it's actually the opposite. You've actually taught me so much about entrepreneurship. I realized my deepest passion was I want to start a nonprofit teaching inner city kids how to code and how to do the thing that I'm really gifted in.
Mm.
So it literally, in a sense, he literally excelled past the opportunity that I brought him to step into his full gifting of how he was created and designed.
And I love that, right? Because we don't know what role we're going to play in the life of somebody else, right? We don't know the impact we're going to have. Like we may see them as whatever title they have at that moment, whatever position they are at that moment, but we don't know in the broad spectrum of their humanness the impact we may have. And that's a great example, right? Maybe RV rentals wasn't his passion, but it taught him skills to really go pursue them. And now the
Yeah.
ripple effect of you believing in them and you giving them systems is they pursue a dream that now, who knows, maybe one of the kids they touch goes on and changes the world.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes me think to the job I got fired at in 2007. I got fired actually for sharing my faith. Uh, Somebody high up in the company didn't like it. They kind of had it out for me. But the cool thing about that was the gentleman who didn't care for me, his brother mentored me. I literally gave my life to the Lord there in 2003. They saw me go from a druggie, alcoholic, laborer on the road to managing a crew of 30 guys. They saw this transformation took place in me. and he mentored me and he taught me a lot about managing others and how to deal with conflict and this and that. So I literally just texted him a couple weeks ago because we still talk and just let him know an update on a couple things. And he's like, "Wow, man, that's so cool." So how rewarding for him to see where I'm at today. And I gotta admit, Jerrod, I did say, I'm like, hey, make sure you tell your brother too. There was a little pride in there. I'm like, make
That
sure your brother knows how I'm doing too, wouldn't you?
dude, that's so awesome, Garnet. Thank you for sharing that story because so many times we forget to go back and just take a moment and thank the people that got us where we are, to show appreciation for them. We're so connected, yet we're so disconnected. So is that something you practice, is going back and reconnecting with people that have impacted you?
I do. I actually put a couple of things on my calendar because the way my brain works, I don't think to do that naturally. And I read a book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy called The Gap and the Gain. And in this book, he talks about how we're more prone to look at the gap. Like, hey, I have a checklist of 10 things today, and here's the one I didn't complete. Where he teaches to live out of the gain, live out of the gratitude of, man, look at the things I did get accomplished today. So literally one of the things that I have on my calendar every night at 9 p.m. It's a win for the day. I sit and I don't do this every day, religiously. I got to admit, I don't have it down pat, but I try to do this. A win for the day, reflect on my day and think about some wins, a goal for tomorrow, and then a question to sleep on.
Hmm.
And a question, specifically a question about something about the next day, because when you do that subconsciously, you're literally working on problem solving uh, something in your next day's agenda, and then you wake up almost feeling accomplished. And then when you do that too, yeah, it just helps you to reflect and think back. And then another thing I put on my calendar, I'll share with you real quick too, since I'm got my calendar open looking at is my imagination. Every day at 3 o'clock for 30 minutes, I literally just try to sit in my imagination and think of whether it's imagining an upcoming trip, imagining an upcoming meeting, imagining something in my children's future, imagining an upcoming meeting. And it's just such a powerful way to just tap into the possibilities of what there is.
Yeah, that's a great way to structure quiet time for yourself and time to get out of the busyness of the day and give yourself room to think and to just be.
Yeah, so much.
Yeah. What would you, if you could give one piece of advice to a new entrepreneur trying to build a system from scratch or scale something that's maybe stuck to get it restarted again, what would you tell them?
What I would tell them is to keep in mind that all work works. And I picked this up from one of my mentors, Myron Golden, and it's also a proverb, Proverbs 14:23. In all labor there is profit. I think a lot of times in entrepreneurship, we get so stuck on thinking on how to execute something that we waste a lot of time. Where Henry Ford says, I take quick, decisive action and I readjust if needed very slowly. So it's like making moves quick, making quick decisions, and then seeing how that's going to work. Where a lot of times what we don't realize is even if it didn't work, the work worked on us. It may have not worked for us, like we didn't get the intended result, but it worked on us. It taught us something about ourselves. It taught us something about the sales system we have, our operations. So that's what I love to encourage entrepreneurs on is like just take massive action. Just
Yep.
continue to take massive action. I just had this today with this guy that manages YouTube channels, and he wanted to go through this whole process. I'm like, no, I've seen your results. You were referred by somebody else. Like, what's the cost? And he's like, well, I don't want to give you the cost without telling you everything because that was like $5,000 a month. But I'm like, no, I've already seen the results. If you work, I don't need to know how it all works. My brain power doesn't need to understand YouTube. That's why I'm paying you $5,000 a month to understand it for me.
Yep.
Like, send me over the paperwork, and because I knew that was the next thing I needed to do in my business is I need to focus on blowing up my YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's good. And I think with so much information readily available, it's easy to get paralyzed and analyzing data, thinking we need one more class, we need one more piece of information, we need one more thing before we actually take action. And you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. You're going to learn more from an action that goes poorly than you will from inaction at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times the action that you take, yeah, that is a total failure. It's really not a failure. It's you just learned something extremely important that it's going to be a guiding principle for you for years to come.
Yep. And maybe it makes you like your franchisee earlier, maybe it makes you realize what you're currently doing isn't what you want to do, but it opens you up and gives you the skills to do the thing you really want to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the journey. You're making forward movement, so you can always adjust. But if you're not making movement, you're really going backwards because your life is moving forward, whether you're making action, taking action or not.
Yeah, I call that momentum, right? We always want to be in front of the momentum we're creating, not sitting there having it come backwards on us.
Yeah, yeah. And once you have that momentum for you, like with me talking about this $5,000 YouTube thing, one of your listeners might be thinking right now, like, holy smokes, $5,000 YouTube? Well, let me rewind 2 years ago when I first started like $25 a day on Facebook, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go, 25 bucks a day. Lord help me. And now we spend, I don't even know what we spend. We spend a thousand or more a day just in our YouTube ads. But right, we took that, we made a decision, we started stepping forward, and
Yep,
that forward movement brought clarity.
exactly. That's what I was going to say. You didn't blindly do it. You didn't go the first step. Let me throw $1,000 on an ad. You did $25. And when that
Exactly.
$25 returned you an investment, you're like, okay, I'm gonna guess there was other steps between 25 and 1,000 that you continued to monitor. And now you're getting feedback that the
Yeah.
action you took actually does the profit, does what you're trying to get it to do.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times that's where, to talk to that a bit about like paid advertising, that's where a lot of companies get in trouble is because when I first started doing paid advertising, I'm like, these guys are like, yeah, you got to let this run for 30 days, and then we readjust. And I'm like, y'all are just trying to sign me up for this long-term program. I thought they were trying to scam me. But now that I've been doing this marketing for years and I'm okay with spending a decent amount of money on advertising, I've realized, no, it's true. You do need to collect the data slowly, learn your audience, learn your avatar, learn how to speak to them and how to connect with them. And it is a process and it's going to cost you some time. It's going to cost you some money. And you could say you're going to make mistakes, but really you're gathering data is what you're doing. You're collecting data, you're learning, you're adjusting. We do that every Monday morning. I meet with my marketing manager. We look at all of our metrics and we make one change based on everything we see. We run that for the week. We see how that one change, helped us. And if I didn't have that marketing manager, you talk about building your team, uh, I'll make 10 changes a day and there's no way to even to
Right.
even go back and measure that because it's like, well, Gar, you changed 10 things yesterday. We can't even measure the results.
Yeah. No, too many inputs, too many variables. You can't check the outcomes.
Exactly.
Gar, as we wrap up, share with me what kind of legacy are you hoping to build and leave through both the Fireside RV Rental and your garrussell.com?
It's a legacy of encouraging others to chase their dreams. You don't have to settle for the 9 to 5 if you're called to be an entrepreneur, because that's who I'm called to serve entrepreneurs and and just living life on your terms.
Mm.
So many people get stuck in living a life that is not the life that they would have hoped or imagined. But it's never too late to make a choice and make a change and go after that life. So just continuing making forward movement and just having a life of impact.
I love it. Gar, thank you so much for joining us this week. Where can our audience follow you to learn more about all the stuff you're involved with?
If you go to garrussell.com, which is GARRRUSSELL.com, that's got a link to my Facebook, my LinkedIn. You can download any of my books for free on there. I give all my books away for free as downloads, or you can buy them on Amazon. You can learn about our different businesses, see our YouTube videos.
Awesome. Garr, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to share your story, and thank you for finding the courage to share it with the world and make the impact you are.
Oh, thanks, brother.
Well, what'd you think of that conversation with Garr? Interesting guy that created this national franchise from a mistake he made buying his wife an RV thinking she was actually going to want to do it. And I think that's my big takeaway from my conversation with him is even the mistakes we think we make, right? I throw up air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube. They're going to lead us somewhere. They're going to lead us to maybe a different place where we wanted to be that we didn't even know we were supposed to be. But we can't get there unless we act, unless we go forward and maybe we make the mistake. So don't shy away from our past. Don't shy away from mistakes we've made. Ask ourselves, what's the lesson and what did we learn and then move forward. So I would love to hear what you thought about Garr in our conversation. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, share, comment on wherever you're consuming us and help us reach our goal. That's ours as a community of being the most impactful podcast in the world. Have a great rest of your week.